visible.
Thank you. So today my topic is on financial inclusion, a key to poverty reduction and empowerment boosting. Now, I will be discussing on how financial inclusion will be helping these marginalized people to come out of poverty, how they can be pushed out of poverty. Now, the outline of my presentation, I will be speaking on poverty, I will speak on financial inclusion, how financial inclusion.
Make it full screen. Dr. George, make it full screen.
Okay. Just a minute, sir.
Down.
Is it that?
No. Again, you start share screen.
Teacher.
No, sorry.
Again, share screen.
1 second. Share screen, yes. I'm sharing. Okay. But, just a minute, sir.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Is it visible now?
Okay.
So before I start off on financial inclusion, I just want to give a brief description on poverty. As all of us know what is poverty, but we do not know the types and effects of poverty. So poverty, you can see everywhere in the world. It can be defined as chronic and deliberate condition that results from multiple adverse synergistic risk factors and affects the mind, body, and soul. This is the definition given by Eric Jensen. Now, simple words that people who do not have the ability to satisfy themselves with the basic needs, that is food, shelter, and clothing, they fall under this category of poverty. Now, poverty can be of different types. We can find poverty in the form of situational poverty. What is situational poverty? It means this poverty arises in families or communities because of some kind of situations. Might be there is a landslide in a particular area, and because of that, people have lost their houses. They have lost everything, whatever little asset they have lost that. And they have, might be because of the floods, they have lost their agriculture, crops have been destroyed. And because of all this, people tend to become poor. There is something called the generational poverty, which means that people are born into families who are already in poverty level. Now, in this kind of situation, when there is generational poverty, these people are bonded laborers, and usually their children also will be, there is no way to come out of this poverty, and therefore they also will be in the poverty. Absolute poverty, in the case of absolute poverty, these people are people who do not have basic necessities like running water, shelter, food, and so on. And relative poverty, it means that it is it refers to the economic status of a family whose income is insufficient to meet its society's average standard of living. It means that there are some earning member in the family, but the income what they have received is not sufficient to meet the standard of living on a daily basis. Okay, the standard of living is much lesser than in an average when we compare to the average person in a country. Now the prevailing poverty is the urban poverty. The rural poverty is decreasing, but the urban poverty is increasing. So poverty which is prevailing in towns and cities, we call them as urban poverty, and the rural poverty is the ones the poverty which is prevailing in rural areas and villages. What are the effects of poverty? Because of poverty, we find there's high crime rates. People, because they lack opportunities of income, of generating income, they tend to get into criminal activities. People selling drugs, people getting into robbery, and things like that. They have low income. There is a lot of drug abuse, and we see most of this drug abuse children, in people who are stricken with poverty. Even children are affected by the drug abuse. There is mental issues, there's starvation, illness, spread of diseases, terrorism, dependence on government for all welfare schemes, because they do not have any other source of income. They have adverse working conditions because these people stricken with poverty do not have voice, and they have to work according to to what their employers say. So they have to work in adverse working conditions. There is increased probability of conflicts and wars, and they are also not having enough of money to, they don't afford hospital treatment. Now, how can we mitigate this poverty? Poverty can be mitigated by inclusive growth. That is what I am going to talk about today, the financial inclusion. It can be also mitigated by building resilience. There is climatic conditions which affect people and which lead people into poverty. When I say climatic condition, it's because of floods, because of cyclones, because of landslides, droughts. People are ending up in poverty. Increase access to education. So if you increase the access to education to these poor people, we can erase poverty to a large extent. We have to improve food security and access to clean water, end war and conflict, embrace cash and microfinance. Now, when we consider Gulf region, most of the Arab nations are actually having a high income group, but there are countries like Syria, Yemen, who are under absolute poverty. People living there are under absolute poverty because of the war. There is civil war going on, and because of that, there is poverty. Therefore, there is a dire need to end war and conflict. How the poverty can be eliminated is, one method is through financial inclusion. So here I'm going to discuss on what is financial inclusion and how it acts as a key to poverty reduction and prosperity boosting. If you see what is financial inclusion, it means including all people into the mainstream of finance. That means we should not exclude any people of by not giving them any financial services. We should give them the basic financial services regardless of their income and savings, and it should focus on providing financial solutions to the economically underprivileged. When we're talking about poverty reduction, this poverty reduction can be possible by inclusion. What we mean by inclusion is three types of inclusion. One is a social inclusion, the second one is a financial inclusion, and the third one is the economic inclusion. Now, what is social inclusion? Social inclusion means providing basic services to promote the empowerment among the poor. That means health services has to be provided to the poor people. Free education has to be provided. They should be provided with awareness of various things. So that is how, about health, about hygiene, all this awareness has to be provided. That is how we socially include these people who are stricken with poverty. There is financial inclusion. How do we do how do we include in the these people in mainstream? By expanding financial capacity to the poor. How are we going to expand financial capacity to the poor? It is by providing them those products and services which cater to their needs. Now, their needs are not similar to the needs of rich people who are like in London or Paris. Their needs are totally different. So, when financial institutions are designing the products and services, they should design the products and services in such a way that it caters to the needs of these people. And moreover, it should be affordable. Economic inclusion means that we have to, the government should provide them and increase access to income generating opportunities by assisting them in creation of entrepreneurship, providing them entrepreneurship development trainings and training them in various other activities so that these people can start their own enterprises and thereby decrease their poverty. They can start earning some income and this way they can decrease the poverty. Now, without the financial inclusive systems, poor individuals and small entrepreneurs will have to rely on their personal wealth, which we know that these people do not have. And their internal resources is too less to invest in their education. So therefore, they cannot become entrepreneurs. Therefore, there is a dire necessity for governments and policymakers to make such policies, draft policies, which will help these poor people to start small income generating activities. Looking into the importance of the financial inclusion, how financial inclusion can remove the poverty to some extent. According to the World Bank, P.S. Srinivas who is a lead economist, has mentioned about the categories of poor people. Now, the poor people can be categorized into three. One is the poorest, next the poorer, and the poor. Now, the poorest people means they are having limited access of every basic necessity. They do not have food, shelter, or even clothing properly. Most of them die hunger, and these children usually die at least much earlier than the others, their peer groups, because of limited food or no proper shelter, no proper clothing, and so on. Now, what the needs of these people are, they need to build asset building. Asset building means it's not huge asset. They just want to enter into the formal financial services. Asset building is that they should be taught how to start saving. Now, for providing how to start saving, they should have some income. So in this, most of the countries, that we have started off with microfinance, and this, when they join those microfinance institutes, they are put into self-help groups, and this microfinance institutes provide them with something called a revolving fund, and with that they can start a small, tiny businesses or group. The self-help group have about 15 to 20 members, and each of them can jointly work together and start generating income. So that's how they can come out of their situation. Now, the needs of these people are totally different. We have to provide them with savings bank account. Now, this savings bank account, mostly, when we are talking about savings bank account, we talk savings bank account will come with a minimum balance. Now, these poor people should be given such kind of savings bank account, which is called a no-frill savings bank account, wherein there should not be it should be a zero balance account. Okay. So when it is zero balance, then they can easily have an account. And not only that, they should not be inactive. Just opening an bank account will not help these poor people to come out of poverty. They should be active. And more or less, we know that these poor people are not inactive, financially inactive. They are active because that they do not get credit from the formal sector. What happens is they borrow money from this the money lenders at an exorbitant rate, and again they fall into poverty. So there is a need for governments to enroll or to bring these poor people into the regular stream, regular formal financial services. The second type is the poorer cluster. They have some source of income. Might be one person, there is a one person in the family as an earning person. Their needs are slightly different from the first category, first cluster. What are they need? What type of products they need is that they need to start up businesses. So they need some kind of overdraft facilities. The bank should be providing them overdraft facilities. And these people might have a small kind of savings. They should have access to broader formal financial services, savings, credit, remittances. Now, in this case, in cluster 2, there might be families where one member might be migrated. Mostly we find people, the poorer people in the rural areas. There will be one or two members who have migrated to the urban areas to earn for their dependent for their families who are dependent on them. So for them, they have to transfer money for their people, for their family members who are dependent on them every weekend or once in a month. So there should be products which are designed in such a way that they can transmit or transfer their funds without much cost. It should be affordable for them. They should be also given awareness on financial management. They should be given awareness of how to plan their finances. The third cluster means it is they are not very vulnerable. They're still vulnerable because they're better off than the first and the second cluster, because they are almost they have basic education, but they have no still regular access to formal services. They don't have life protection. They should have insurances. And when we are talking about social protection, we need to see that all the people are covered under social protection. In India, I know that there is some insurance schemes which is, per day they have to just spend 1 rupee for insurance schemes, insurance covering their life. So that way there should be, globally, countries should come out with micro insurance where people can get covered under insurances. Now, after this, that is, once they have been, the poor people, what they do, the first cluster, once they're given their needs are fulfilled, they get into the second cluster, they move to the second cluster, and once this, once these products are, once their needs are met, they go to this third cluster, and like this way they can end their poverty. They can escape from poverty. What are financial inclusion? When we're thinking about financial inclusion, what are the type of products we have to develop? Financial inclusion just does not mean only savings and credit. Savings means asking people to start saving in bank accounts, and credit is like giving loans. But apart from that, there are certain other things which have to be considered when we are designing financial products and services for these type of people. Now, it means that we have to think of asset building, income generating activities, and risk mitigation. So there should be products for saving, deposit, mutual fund, stock. Apart from that, they should have the income generating activities. Bank should be able to give them loans and overdraft facilities, even without collateral. So these people are so poor that they do not have collateral to take loans. So it is through the way they can be linked to some kind of microfinance institutes or self-help groups so that they can be easily getting loans from the nationalized banks. There should be also payment system designed in such a way that people can transfer their money without losing much. For example, for instance, if in most of the rural areas there are no banks, so when they have to, supposing they have to purchase the raw material, produce it, then sell it and give their money to their family members, they cannot. Supposing they're working in urban areas, they cannot come every weekend to give their family members money. So there should be a system prevalent in such a way that they can transfer their funds without any charges, any fee, or very at a nominal. Now there should be risk mitigation also. There should be insurance and pension. So there should be social risk, there should be pension. Okay, through all this, they should be also provided with financial education. So that financial education, they should be trained with for entrepreneurship. They should train with different types of skills so that they can start off with nominal amount of money, some enterprises, so that they can create more jobs in their areas. And also they should be supported with technological support. When we're talking about financial inclusion are of 4 dimensions. The first dimension we are talking about is the basic products. Now, the basic products available which are prevalent now are the payments, savings, credit, and insurance. Now, payments is like in India, we have RTGS, NEFT, IMPS. Now, these kind of services should be there everywhere globally. Apart from that, there is money, mobile banking. And actually in Africa, in Kenya, they started using something called the MESO many years back. So we cannot tell these people are unaware of technology. Okay, even before the other part of the world has started mobile banking, people from Kenya started using PESO. Okay, this is a mobile banking where they can transfer money easily at a very nominal fee. The second dimension is provision of adequate quality. So quality products should be delivered, and it should be delivered at the right time. It should be stable. The products should be stable. It should be available. So everywhere, just because there are no the traditional bankings in rural areas, they should be given some kind of a system. There should be some kind of system where where people can access it very easily. So the availability of these kind of products should be there in all parts of these rural areas, not because they are away from the urban areas. It should be affordable. All the services and products, they should be able to use in a very affordable manner. They should be convenient, and also they should be consumer protected. With regard to the choice and competition, they should this provision of range, these type of financial services and products should be by not only from the government. There should be NGOs who should be giving these products. There should be cooperatives, because there are many areas where the banks are still not penetrated. There are no commercial banks, or there's no rural banks which still have not penetrated. In those areas, the NGOs in the form of microfinance and cooperatives can function. So there is a choice, and because of competition, there might be the rate of charges charged by these different people will be different, and because of competition, there will be people will be able to access the financial services. So the last thing is that it should be inclusive. Inclusive means it should be available for all of them, not only for a particular sector of people. It should be available for the poor, the women, the rural. Especially why we are talking about women, because we know that out of the total, in the entire global poor, we know that about more than half of the global poor are women, struggling women who are vulnerable. Therefore, that is why we are always stressing on women and the rural population. Now, this is a graph relating to the financial inclusion and the GDP of different countries. Now, we see that in different, there is a very positive relationship between the financial inclusion and the GDP. Wherever in countries which has more of financial inclusion, the GDP has increased. So that is why we say there's a positive correlation between the financial inclusion with that of GDP. I'm taking some studies from the World Banks to show how financial inclusion has improved the GDP, has improved the job opportunities, and also creation of new businesses. Now, in a study which was made by the World Bank regarding Mexico, started increasing the financial inclusion among its people, and just because of increase of 10% of financial inclusion, this led to 7% increase in employment, 5% increase in new businesses, and 3% increase in GDP. So this is a proof that the financial inclusion will improve the GDP of any country. And in the case of another study which was made, we see that in Nepal households, the total assets has increased. Now, when we're talking about assets, it can be in the form of cash, it can be in the form of land, agricultural land purchase, or might be some cattle because it is rural area. So with the help of this financial inclusion, about 16% of the household in Nepal has increased their cash asset and other assets by 50%. Again, in Malawi, it is basically famous for tobacco cultivation, and the tobacco farmers cultivated almost over 10% more land, giving them a rise in the agricultural output by more than 27%. Their household spending also increased by 17.4%. This is how the employment can be created, how job can be created with the help of MSMEs, and how the poverty can be removed. Okay. Now this is a study based on Sri Lanka. They have there was a sample of 100 MSMEs which was taken, and they saw that there were loans which were provided, and for every loan between 140,000 to 340,000, there were 10. Every businesses which was given rupees 140,000 to 340,000 loan, there were 10 to 31 jobs which are created. Now, by increasing the number of entrepreneurs, it is a positive indication for improvement in the standard of living by providing them more jobs, or by creating more jobs. So they relieve, because of this, they relieve there is they get more loans from these banks. They can enter into entrepreneurship. They get capital investments from banks, and they can create new businesses, create new jobs, and this way they can reduce the poverty. Now, how is empowerment with the help of financial inclusion? Now, when we talk about financial inclusion, this financial inclusion will lead to different types of empowerment. Actually, overall empowerment is possible with the help of financial inclusion. This is a study which I made during about 5 years back by it's the financial inclusion of women through microfinance. Now, from that study, we have found out that just because of financial inclusion, it leads to economic empowerment, social empowerment, political empowerment, and psychological empowerment. Now, when we're talking about economic empowerment, what do we mean by economic empowerment? Now, out of the 450 people whom I had interviewed, we found out that about 3/4 of the people were able to alleviate the poverty. How they could do that? Because they were given credit and they started small businesses or income generating activities, and this way their family income increased. They were able, and it was a study on women, and women were able to provide contribute to the family expenditure. They were able to make proper decision and how to utilize the money properly. They were able to purchase assets. Then they were able to save regularly. And in this microfinance, there is one particular characteristic of microfinance is that every week or every once and twice a week, once in 2 weeks, all these women or all these self-help group people join together and they contribute their savings. So regularly there is a regular savings. There is improved financial management skills. People, because of this financial inclusion, they have better financial management skill, and they could also easily meet children's educational requirement. The social empowerment, once
Dr.
they were well off
Dr.
in the
Leena?
sense that they.
Dr. Leena,
Yes, sir.
little bit
Yes.
faster.
Sorry, sir.
Little faster.
Okay, they had improved social status. They also had decreased violence in the family because, as I told you, women were contributing to their income to the family, and therefore there was decrease to violence. There was recognition in family and community. There was they received mutual help and support whenever they required. That is within the self-help groups. They were receiving whenever they were getting into some problems, they were getting some mutual help. They also were able to actively participate in community activities. So that is part of the social empowerment. With regard to political empowerment, these people, when they were before the financial inclusion of before getting into small businesses, not getting enough of money, they were not bothered about how to vote. They never had awareness of voting to whom. They were actually under pressure voting to somebody, some people whom they do not dislike. But after this financial inclusion, there was improved political awareness. They were able to discuss political views with others. They were able to attend various political meetings. And one great thing is that they were able to vote according to their own decision. And there was also improved, their gender equality also improved. And once they, because of all this empowerment, psychologically also these people were empowered. They had their confidence level improved, their self-efficacy and self-esteem that they are good enough to do things. That kind of feeling also improved. They also could make decisions. They were actively involving themselves in decision making. They also were able to do more things independently. They were able to speak to higher officials boldly. Now, these are the different types of empowerments as far as financial inclusion is, inclusion for the women are concerned. So with this, I come to an end. I would rather say that financial inclusion is a strong agent to eradicate poverty and boost empowerment. Given the current global crisis of COVID-19 pandemic, there is an urgent need to scale up financial inclusions, perhaps more important as a complementary and incremental approach to work towards meeting the first sustainable development goals to end poverty and other deprivations than at any other time in the recent history. Thank you. This is my presentation. I'm open.